Hi, grade 5. So we're studying the woodwind instruments right now, and I wanted to show you one of my favorite woodwinds, the flute. This is the instrument that I started on in grade 6. So next year when you're choosing an instrument, the flute is one of the ones you'll get to choose from. So I'm going to show you today the flute, and we're going to then compare it to a recorder, because in the activity today, you'll be doing that comparison. So I'm going to tell you all about it, and let's see how much you can remember at the end. So the flute is a long metal instrument. My flute is made out of silver, and the flute has lots of keys on it. Okay, there are holes underneath all of these keys. And when you press a key down, it changes the length of this tube, and that's what makes the different sounds. There are 3 parts to a flute. The head joint, the body, and the foot joint. Okay? So the flute has 3 parts. Now, to make a sound on the flute, there's a hole in the head joint right here. And what we need to do is blow across. We need to make the air go across the hole so that when it hits the edge here, it splits, and that's what makes a sound. So I'm going to show you. Okay, and we make a little smile like this, and we blow a tiny stream of air out the center of our lips like this. So I'm going to do that while I blow air across the hole. And when I change the keys, you'll see what happens. It changes the sound of the flute. So, the flute is an ancient instrument, but it didn't always look like this. The flute, when it first kind of came on the scene, was actually the oldest flutes are made of bone or wood, way back in cavemen, and it's developed over the years. Even up until the 17 and 1800s, they were using wooden flutes. The flutes were always made of wood or bone in the previous days, but mostly made out of wood. And then there was about 18 something, I can't remember, Theobald Boehm went and heard a flute player who was really, really good, and he was a flute player as well. And when he was listening to the flute player had added some cool things to his flute, but it was still made of wood. And Boehm went home and said, I'm going to make an even better flute. And so he wanted the sound of the flute to be able to cut through the orchestra, because when you play something on wood, it's kind of quiet. So he decided to make a flute out of metal, and he added all these keys. Okay, it used to only have holes like the recorder, but he added keys so that he could make the holes even bigger, and that allows the flute sound to be really big, and the metal allows it to cut right through the orchestra. Okay, this is part of the woodwind family, even though it's not made of wood. Okay, it's made of metal, but it is part of the woodwind family for all the reasons that we studied before. Okay, it's straight, it's no curves, it has keys instead of valves, and you don't buzz your lips, you blow air across. Okay, now the recorder is also a woodwind instrument. My recorder is made out of wood. This is sort of like what a flute would have looked like hundreds of years ago. The difference between the flute and the recorder, obviously, is that the flute is played side to the side and the recorder is played up and down. That's one of the big, big differences. Now, my recorder only has 2 parts. Okay? Your recorder would have 3 parts because you probably have a little foot joint that will come off as well. So recorders can be made out of 2 or 3 parts. The flute is always made out of 3 parts. Okay? Now, the recorder is mostly made out of wood. Student model ones are made out of plastic, but the recorder is traditionally a wooden instrument, and it has holes in it. Okay? Now, in order to make a sound on the recorder, you have to blow inside the top of the mouthpiece, and the flute does not go inside your mouth, but the recorder does. So when you blow air into the recorder, it's the same idea though. The air splits on this wooden hole here. Some of the air comes out and some of the air goes through the recorder. So that whistle type of sound is the same, but the recorder goes inside your mouth. When you move your fingers, the sound changes because you change the length of the tube. That's one of the things that's the same. It has holes, okay? And when you change the length of the tube by pressing down like the flute, it changes the sound. Okay? The recorder has been around for ages and ages and ages, since ancient times. It was very, very popular in the 1700s and the 1800s. And it's now really popular in school. And the recorder is also in the woodwind family. So those are the similarities and the differences between the recorder and the flute. Now, I have an assignment for you today. You are going to, hopefully, if you can find one, I'd like you to get a bottle. It can be a cola bottle or something glass, like one of the cola bottles that are glass. If you can find one of those, something with a fairly small opening, okay? Because when you make the same kind of air blowing that you do on the flute, using a bottle, you can make a flute sound. So I'm going to use the same formation of my lips like this, with a smile, and blow a tiny stream of air out the front. And I'm going to put this to my lips, okay, and watch. So, if you can find a glass bottle with a small opening, then you can make a flute sound too. Send me a video of yourself making a flute sound. Now, some of you might have something called a pan flute at home. That's exactly the same idea as the bottle. So if you can't find one of these, and you do have one of these, you can also make the sound on the pan flute, like this. So you can practice your flute sound. I hope you have fun, and I look forward to seeing all of your answers in the worksheet on Seesaw.